Logic Pro makes sidechaining a super easy thing to do, and today we'll talk about how you can take advantage of that in your tracks. Let's get into it. What's going on, voiceover warriors and keyboard ninjas? This is the Oreo Monster welcoming you back to Logic.band. It's a site full of tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you as a blind Logic, VoiceOver, macOS, and GarageBand user. If you haven't yet, type Logic.band into your web browser, hit return, and when you land on the site, sign up for the mailing list so you can get a free Getting Started with Logic course. So here I'm in Logic Pro and I have a project with just 2 tracks in it.
Track 1 analog circuits, group.
Track 1 is using one of Logic electronic drum kits, and I played in a pattern with that.
Track 26 won't give up chord 0 1 inches, group.
And track 26 is a loop from the loop browser. We're going to talk about how we can sidechain this pattern that we have on a track to different parts of the kick, the snare, etc. Now, something I'd like to point out: when you use the electronic drum kits in Logic, if you play on the drum track itself, you'll notice that you can play all the sound. But what a lot of people don't realize, this is a track stack, so you can expand this.
Track 2 kick 1 analog circuits, group.
And you'll have the individual kick,
Track 3 kick 2, and track 4 snare 1, and track 5 snare 2, analog circuits, group.
etc. tracks that you can record to. And the advantage of doing it this way,
Track 3 kick 2, track 2 kick 1, analog circuits, group.
the kick, snare, etc. is pitched across the keyboard, and you can play at whatever pitch you'd like. And it also makes it a little bit easier if you want to sidechain different elements of the kick as well. Let's give a listen to what we're working with here. The second track in the project, track 26, is the loop that we want to sidechain. The way you generally sidechain something is you put a compressor on the track that you'd like to have sidechained. So in this case, we want to sidechain this loop and this pattern to, like, say, the kick or the hi-hat or something like that. So we're going to put the compressor on this synth track right here. Once you do that, in the compressor, you're going to need to select what you want to sidechain it to, and that's where you can pick the other track in the project that you would like to sidechain the compressor to. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm going to jump into the mixer and pull up the compressor on this Won't Give Up Chords track.
Won't give up chord 0 1, dialog.
So we got the compressor pulled up here, and I'm going to navigate past where you can select a preset, and you're going to see something that says pop-up button, internal.
Toolbar, button, bypass, uncheck, checkbox, user default, pop-up button, sidechain,
You see it says sidechain.
internal, pop-up button.
And it says internal pop-up button. This basically means that right now the Logic compressor is using this internal sidechain. And what that usually is a sidechain filter. Sidechain filter basically means you can pick a frequency within the compressor and say, hey, ignore this frequency. It's useful in the case of like drums or on your stereo output. If you want to use like a bus compressor to kind of glue your mix together, you can have it ignore, say, anything below 100 hertz or something like that, because then that way, if you have a big heavy kick or bass in your project, it won't trigger the compressor as much, and it won't cause the compressor to pump as much in those situations. But in this situation, we want to use what's called an external sidechain. An external sidechain is when you tell the compressor to listen to another track in the project instead of the track that it's on. So even though the compressor is on this synth track and it's going to be compressing this synth track, what it's going to be listening to is the kick track, for example. And every time the kick hits, the compressor is going to react to the kick hitting, and it's going to squash the loop or the synth track that it's on, because it's only listening to the kick and it's not paying attention to what's going on the synth track. Let's go ahead and select what we want to sidechain this to. So I'm going to VO space on this internal pop-up button.
Menu, 4 items, check mark, internal, input, submenu.
Go down to
Inst, submenu.
Inst. So because this is a software instrument track that we're using, you want to go down to Inst.
Inst, submenu, 24 items, kick 1, analog circuits, Inst 1.
And let's do the kick. So you see right there it says kick 1, but you can go down this list. Let's say you want to sidechain it to the hi-hats.
Kick 2, snare 1, snare 2, snare 3, analog, clap 1, analog circuit, clap 2, analog, hi-hat 1, analog circuits, Inst 9.
You can select hi-hat 1.
Hi-hat 2, analog circuits, Inst 10.
Hi-hat 2, whatever you had recorded your hi-hats using. All right, so let's go back up.
Hi-hat 1, analog circuit, clap 2, clap 1, snare, kick 2, kick 1, analog circuits, Inst 1. Inst 1, pop-up button.
That's the first step. So now let's go look at the compressor controls.
Table, compressor threshold, minus 20.0 decibel slider, 60% slider.
Now, the first thing you probably want to adjust is the threshold. So I'm going to go ahead and play this and pull this threshold down.
Minus 30.0 decibels. Minus 35.0 decibels. Minus 40.0 decibels.
So you see, the more I pull down the threshold, the more you start to hear the effect.
Compressor threshold, minus 50.0 decibel slider, 0% slider.
Your threshold is going to set how extreme the effect is.
Ratio, 2.1:1 slider, 21.2% slider.
And the ratio will set kind of how extreme your pumping can be. If you take this down, let's go down to say 1.5 to 1.
1.4:1.
You see it's a little subtler.
2.1:1, 3.1:1.
And as you push up the ratio, it gets a little bit more extreme. Now, depending on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to sidechain, may depend on where you want to set this. But you probably want to start somewhere not as extreme.
2.1:1.
Let's go down.
1.4:1. 1.5:1. 1.6:1.
Let's leave it there for now.
Attack, 15.0 millisecond slider, 30% slider.
And you can use your attack and release time to fine tune how smooth or choppy that pumping is going to be.
Release, 51.0 millisecond slider, 33.6% slider. In, release, 51.0 milliseconds, slider.
So let's turn the release up.
91.0 milliseconds. 160.0 milliseconds.
Versus all the way down. I'm going to turn up the output of this compressor a little bit. So at the bottom of the window.
33.6%. Attack. 15.0 output gain. 0.0 decibel slider. 50 in. 0.0 in slider. Plus 5.0 decibel.
Alright. That should make it a little bit easier to hear what's going on. Let's adjust this release so you can kind of get an idea what it's doing.
In slider. 91.0 milliseconds. 160.0 milliseconds. 91, 51.0 milliseconds. 29.0, 16.8.9 milliseconds. 5.0 milliseconds. 8.9, 16, 29.0, 51.0 milliseconds. 91.0 51.0 milliseconds.
That's around where we started. The attack time is going to be how quickly it's going to duck the synth down. The release time is how quickly that synth is going to come back up after the kick hits, or whatever you sidechain it to hits.
In slider, 20.0 milliseconds. 15, 10.5.0 milliseconds. 5.0 10.0 milliseconds. 15.0 milliseconds. 20.0 milliseconds.
So once again, attack and release time kind of lets you tailor just how smooth or choppy the pumping effect is going to be. The attack time, once again, how soon it's going to clamp down, push down, duck down the synth when the kick hits. And the release time, how soon it's going to let that come back up, swell back up once the kick hit as decayed. So that's how you can use the attack and release times. The other thing to keep in mind with the Logic compressor is you have 7 different compressor types. So sometimes it may help to go through those compressor types.
Circuit type, platinum digital pop-up button.
Circuit type, so
menu, 7 items check mark, platinum digital.
Have
Studio VCA, Studio FAT, Classic VCA, Vintage FAT, Vintage Octo.
Bunch of different types. Let's go with Vintage Octo for now. So you see, picking a different compressor type can also help with the sound of it as well. Let's bypass this. And enable. Once you kind of get this dialed in, what you want to do.
Output gain, plus 10.0 decibel slider, 6 in, plus 10 in slider, plus 5.0 decibels. Plus 0, plus 1.5 decibels, plus 2.5 decibels, plus 3.0 decibels.
You can use this output gain to match the level to the bypass signal.
Bypass, checkbox. Uncheck, bypass, checkbox. Check, bypass, checkbox. Uncheck, bypass, checkbox.
Looks like I still made it a little bit louder, but you get the idea. You can use that output gain to match the bypass and non-bypass level, so you can hear a little better what's going on when it's bypassed versus when it's not. So that's normally how you would do sidechaining, but for whatever reason, the Logic compressor isn't always the best tool to use for that type of sidechaining. You can use any other compressor that allows you to sidechain, and I'm just going to take a quick look at a couple of third-party compressors just to kind of show you what kind of things you might need to look out for if you're using something that's not the Logic compressor. And then I will show you another tool inside of Logic that you can use to get some really cool sidechain effects going. So I got TDR Malakoff, I believe it's called, open, and that's a free third-party compressor. And same thing, if I navigate past where you can see presets and things like that.
Toolbar button, bypass, checkbox, default, pop-up button, none, pop-up button.
You see it just says none. And if I VO space on this.
Menu, 4 items, input, submenu, inst, submenu.
So we get the same menu.
Inst, submenu, 20, kick 1, analog circuits, inst 1, pop-up button.
We'll go ahead and select the kick.
Default, bypass, toolbar button. Won't give up chord. Toolbar. Bypass. Check. Checkbox. Uncheck. Bypass. Checkbox.
Bypass that.
Check. Bypass. Checkbox.
So let's go look at some of these settings.
Collapse. Disclosure. Extended.
Expand that.
Table. In table. SC filter FREC. 120 slider.
So right here we have SC filter FREC. So that's usually sidechain filter. And the sidechain filter frequency
SC filter FREC. 120 slider.
is 120. If I VO down,
SC filter on. Check. Checkbox.
you see the sidechain filter is on. So right now this compressor is ignoring everything below 120 hertz. And that's what I was talking about earlier. But we don't want the sidechain filter. So let's explore this plugin some more. I'm going to turn off the sidechain filter actually.
Uncheck.
And let's explore this plugin some more.
Attack. 10 slider.
So you see attack.
Mode. 0.0 pop up. Release. 100. Ratio. 4.0. Thresh. Minus 10.8. 0.50 slider. Makeup. 0.0. Dry mix. 0. Output. 0.0 slide. Stereo mode. Mono radio. Quality. Precise slider. Bypass. Uncheck. Checkbox. Sidechain mode. SC selected radio button. EXT. SC radio button.
Some compressors will have a feature where you have a sidechain mode, and you see here it says int SC, which is internal sidechain. That's where it will use a sidechain filter.
EXT. SC radio button. EXT. SC radio button.
And you see EXT SC, that's the external sidechain. So if you
Selected. EXT. SC radio button.
enable that, now it's listening to the kick drum instead of using the internal sidechain filter. And much like the Logic compressor, you can use the threshold.
Thresh. Minus 10.0 slider.
So threshold, let's pull that down some
In.
more.
Minus 10.0 slider.
You see it's only at minus 10 right now.
In slider. Minus 10. Minus 10.1. Minus 10.1. Minus 10.2. Minus 10.2. Minus 10.3. Minus 10. Minus 10.4. Minus 14. Minus 14.1.
Just gonna lean on that, pull it down.
Minus 21.5. Minus 21.5. Minus 30.1. Minus 30.2. Minus 35.
So you see, as you pull that down, the more extreme it gets.
Ratio. 4.0 slider.
Ratio's at
In.
4 to
Ratio.
1.
4.0.
Let's
Slider.
crank this up a bit.
In slider. 4.0.
So as I said before, the threshold, you want to pull that down till you get it going to where it's really audible, where you like it. You can use the ratio to adjust how extreme that pumping effect is. And then you can go ahead and use the attack and release time to kind of make it super smooth or super choppy, depending on what you're trying to do. So that pretty much works the same way. So I'm going to show you another third-party compressor just so you can see another way that third-party compressors kind of display the sidechain info. Here we're in the Townhouse bus compressor from Plugin Alliance, and I'm just going to jump over to where you can set your sidechain.
None. Pop-up button.
So right here you see it says none.
Menu. Input. Submit. Ins. Submenu. Ins. Submenu. 24. Kick 1. Analog circuit. Ins 1. Pop-up button.
But we still need to jump into these settings.
Busy. Progress indicator. Collapse. Disclosure triangle.
Let's expand
Expanded.
that.
Table. In table. Bang. A pop-up button. Comp in. Check. Key in. Uncheck checkbox.
And so you see we have this key in right here that's unchecked. So some compressors refer to the sidechain as a key input. So we need to enable the key input.
Check. Auto fade. Uncheck checkbox. Thresh. Plus 0.1 decibel slider.
Now we can adjust
In.
the
Thresh. Plus
threshold.
0.1 in slider. Minus 2.9 decibels. Minus 17.0 decibels. Minus 20.0 decibels. Auto slider. Ratio. 2. 1 slider.
And the
In.
ratio.
2. 1. In slider. 10. 1. Auto slider.
And we can adjust the output to kind of bring that up and adjust the attack and release. But you kind of get the idea of how this works. So you want to look for sidechain SC. You want to look for where it says external sidechain or key input. Those are the two things you may want to look for depending on which third-party plugins you're dealing with. You still will need to select what track you want to sidechain it to from the pop-up button found next to where it usually says manual, default, or user default, factory default, etc., you know, where you normally choose your presets. Those are the things you want to look for in a third-party plugin if you're not going to use one of Logic's stock tools to do this. Now, there are third-party tools out there that are just made for sidechaining. They're nothing more than a sidechain tool, and they use their own internal LFO, so you can set the tempo, whatever you want them to sidechain to. You don't have to sidechain them to another track, and we can look at those in another tutorial. If that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. Let's look at a Logic tool that will let you sidechain. Now I am in the Logic noise gate. So the noise gate is also found under Dynamics, the same place where the compressor is found when you're adding a track to the project. But the nice thing about the noise gate is I think this is actually a better tool for some of those EDM style sidechaining tricks that you might want to do. Now, the Logic compressor is still useful, especially if you want to do something like, say, duck a delay or a reverb from a vocal, so that way when the singer is singing, they kind of stay out of the way, but then when they're not singing, in space between words, the delay or reverb tails kind of swell up a little bit. It's very useful for that sort of thing. For some of the more EDM style sidechain effects, I find that the noise gate might actually work a little better in those scenarios. So let's go ahead and select what we want to sidechain this to.
User default. Sidechain. None. Pop-up button.
So sidechain set to none again.
Menu. Input. Submit. Inst. Submenu. Inst. Submit. Kick 1. Analog circuits. Inst 1. Inst 1. Pop-up button.
Set that to instrument 1. Kick.
Table. Threshold. Minus 50 decibel slider. 50% slider. Selected.
And now let's go into this
Threshold.
table. And we need to jump to the bottom of this window.
Mode. Gate selected radio button. Ducker radio button. Row 13 of 13.
And you see we have this mode here that says gate or ducker. So right now it's on gate. And the thing about this is when it's set to gate, whenever the kick hits is the only time that you'll hear the synth. So it basically means that the gate only will open whenever the item it's being sidechained to is there. And it will close whenever the item it's not being sidechained to isn't there. So whenever the kick hits, you'll hear the synth. Whenever the kick isn't being played, you won't hear the synth at all. Ducker does the opposite. And that's usually what you're trying to do with sidechain, is you want to duck the signal whenever the thing you're sidechaining to hits. So in this case, whenever the kick hits, you want the volume of the synth to go down. And then when the kick isn't there, or when the hi-hat isn't there or whatever, the volume of the synth comes back up. So you can use this in either manner. So let's go ahead and switch this over to ducker.
Mode. Gate selected radio button. Ducker radio button.
Interact with
mode.
that.
Gate selected. Ducker radio button. Threshold. Minus 50 decibel slider. 50% dim circular. Null.
And it kicks us back up to the top of the window whenever we switch it over to ducker. But I'll go ahead and play this and show you what this sounds like. Now it's ducking the synth whenever the kick plays and brings it back up. So if I jump to the bottom of this window again,
Ducking. Minus 20 decibel slider. 80% slider.
we have this slider underneath where you can select gate or ducking, and you can use that to adjust how much it is going to bring the signal down when the kick hits.
In.
So
Minus 20 decibels. In slider.
right now it's taking it down by minus 20 dB, but I can take
Minus 30 decibels.
take it all the way down
Minus 90 decibels. Minus 100 decibels.
minus 100. You see, that makes it a little bit more choppy because now you're turning down the signal very, very low to pretty much inaudible whenever the kick hits. The noise gate also has
Attack. 3 millisecond slider. 3% slider.
attack and release parameters that you can use to also fine tune how choppy and smooth it is.
Threshold. Minus 50 decibel slider. 50% slider.
And there's a threshold in here in case you want to set how sensitive that ducking or gate is.
In. Minus 50 decibels. Slider. In slider. Minus 8. Minus 8. Minus.
If I turn
Minus,
this
minus,
back
minus,
up,
minus, minus 40 decibels. Minus 30 decibels. Minus 20 decibels. Minus 30 decibels. Minus 50 decibels. Minus 60 decibels. Minus 50 decibels. Minus 60 decibels.
So there you have it. The other thing I will
Auto
show
slider.
you quickly,
In. Gate. Radio button.
switch us back over to gate. And if I jump back up to the top here,
Reduction. Minus 100 decibel slider. 0% slider.
this reduction slider allows you to adjust just how much it's going to reduce it whenever the kick is not there.
In.
So
Minus 100 decibels. Slider.
right now you see set
In slider.
100.
Minus 90. Minus 80 decibels. Minus 40 decibels. Minus 20 decibels.
You see it's not completely being chopped out
Minus 20 decibels.
as when it's at 100. So that's how you can use the noise gate to do some of those EDM style ducking effects. Now, there are plenty of things in Logic that'll let you sidechain. Some of the filters will let you sidechain, found under the filter category. And even things like the fuzz wah will let you sidechain, which is useful for the wah. If you want a filter sweep of some kind to some kind of rhythmic, you can sidechain it off of your hi-hats or kick or something like that and have it perform the wah effect, that EQ filter sweep effect, to that sidechain as well. So whenever you load up a plugin in Logic, any of the stock Logic plugins, be sure to look next to that pop-up button that says manual, etc., where you can pick your presets to see if the plugin gives you the option to sidechain, and have some fun exploring some of the sidechain options you have in Logic. And like I said, if you decide to use a third-party compressor, just remember to make sure that you enable the external sidechain or the key input after you select what track you want to sidechain it to. If you'd like me to take a look at any of those plugins that are just standalone sidechain plugins, let me know. That's something we can arrange in a future tutorial if enough people are interested. So leave a comment and let me know. Thank you for checking out this tutorial. I hope you found that useful and helpful. If you got any tips you'd love to share with the community, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe both to the YouTube channel and to the email list found at logic.band. That way you can get a free Getting Started with Logic course, and I can keep you up to date on everything going on over here at logic.band. If you'd love to go deeper on any of these topics or anything related to Logic, VoiceOver, macOS, or GarageBand, then book yourself some one-on-one training by visiting logic.band/training. Want to support what's going on here at logic.band? Then visit logic.band/support, where you can make a one-time or subscribe to make an ongoing Patreon-style donation. Links to all of these, plus supplemental tutorials and blog posts, can be found in the description below. And as always, until next time, happy recording.